The definition of the word wisdom is that having the quality of experience, knowledge, and right judgment. The reading itself can be a bit confusing at the end because it asks you to put away immaturity and strive for insight. And what is it that we are looking for in this insight? One of the ways that I like to address that question is to say to you, or to ask you this question: what do you think the world would look like if we looked at it, saw it through the eyes of God? What would the world look like if you saw it through the eyes of God? Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, talks about people not being unwise, but being wise. Well, why is it that it's so important for you and I to be wise? I mean, wise can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. The truth of the matter is, what Proverbs is prophesying and what Paul is telling the people at Ephesus is that you and I ought to know the will of God. How in the world does that happen? How is it that you and I can know the will of God? I mean, God's thoughts are not our thoughts. God's timeline is not our timeline. How is that possible? It requires an extraordinary amount of commitment and discipline to become disciples of Jesus Christ. You hear me talk about that a lot. You know, the word disciple is really nothing more than student of. And those who followed Jesus from place to place once he entered into public ministry didn't refer to him as the Christ. They referred to him as Rabbi, Rabboni, teacher. They were students of the teacher. And what is it that Jesus tried to teach us? How is it that he modeled his life? What is it he calls each and every one of us to still in this day and in this age and in this place? He calls us to be followers. Following someone requires active involvement in whatever it is that they are doing. It is not something that we get to sit passively by and just observe. We need to step out of a mode of being observers and start being passionate followers, active in this faith community in the life of Jesus Christ. And we need to let that show, because we live in a day and age where fear seems to be the rule and order of the day. White people are fearing that people of color or different ethnic origins are taking over and that we will no longer be the ruling party or the ruling culture and class in this country. And so we fear people who are other. That is not new, by the way, to this day and age. When we look at what is going on, years ago, my ancestors came from Ireland. And they were treated as second, third, and fourth class citizens, just like is happening today to those who are from Hispanic descent or who are coming from other places in other countries. I read an article recently from Sojourner magazine that said Christianity in America has failed because it fears. It fears that which is other. You know, as much as I can say I understand why the author wrote that article, I don't agree with it, because here's what I think people fear in Christianity today. They fear being all-in Christians. They fear moving into the future and letting go of the past. If things were only as they were in our heyday, when our pews were filled and we had dances on Friday and Saturday night and spaghetti dinners, and we did all of the things that we did as a faith community, then everything would be just fine. But that day and age is gone. Just like the day and age when you can support a parish of this size with pledge and plate are gone, because people don't contribute in the way that they used to. It's happening right here in Grace. Look around. I mean, really, look around, see who's here. These are the same people who will be here next week and the week after, but no one is willing to invite others. No one is willing to evangelize because it makes us uncomfortable. An all-in Christian understands that our role is to make disciples. That's the second of the two commands that Jesus gives us. Love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves, and go into the world and make disciples of all nations. That does not happen without you stepping outside of your comfort zone and without you being willing to share your story about why Jesus is important to you and why it is you think this faith community should survive. And why it is you want people from the outside who have never heard about Jesus or who have been hurt by some other community of faith to come here for healing, for sanctity, to find peace, and to grow in their relationship with God. Christianity is dying today because people fear doing those things. An all-in Christian does this. You know, we have 52 weeks out of the course of the year. I like to tell people that the average person goes on vacation a couple of times a year. Maybe it's 2, 4, 6 weeks. So, you know, I would expect not to see people in the parish for sometimes up to 6 weeks in the course of a calendar year. That's normal. And by the way, when you're not here, I'm sure that wherever you are, unless you're on a deserted island someplace, there is a church that you can attend. It doesn't have to be Episcopalian. It can be Roman Catholic. It can be Pentecostal. It can be UCC. It doesn't really matter to me. Go to church. If you're camping in Canada in the middle of the wild, trust me, there's a place for you to go to church. I know I heard a story about it just yesterday. So all-in Christians make a commitment to be a part of their faith community and to make that a central part of their life. All-in Christians volunteer their time. And it does require that we have to make choices about what it is we do in our busy lives. But if your church is only one among many things that you do, then you need to reevaluate your relationship with your church. Volunteer, become a part, help us be active in this community of Lockport. All-in Christians tithe. Listen to me. God tells us, Jesus tells us, Holy Scripture tells us that 64 times that we must tithe. What is a tithe? It is 10% of your gain. That's the minimum level. It's not the upper end, it's the minimum level. And then there is another 37 times where Jesus talks about, or Scripture talks about, sacrificial giving, which is above and beyond. I am not one of those priests who think it's okay to say that if you give to the American Cancer Society or to the American Heart Association, that is a part of your tithe. No, that is a donation to a charitable organization in our country. And by the way, please, just as a cautionary tale, look at who you give to and ask yourself how many cents of my dollar are actually going to the cause that I'm giving to. Do you know that the CEO of the United Way makes well over $7 million a year? I don't give to the United Way personally because I think that's just greedy. All-in Christians read Scripture on a daily basis. If it's something you've never done before, it's something you feel awkward about, that's okay. Do it anyway. Start at Genesis and read through to Revelation. If you don't understand it, come and talk to someone like me. We can offer Bible studies. I'm not doing it right now because it takes me about 8 hours to prepare a 45-minute lesson. And the last several times that I've done it, nobody has come. Some of you even bought the books for this study, but then didn't come. All-in Christians read Holy Scripture. All-in Christians have a deep and abiding prayer life. If Jesus is important to you in your life, if Jesus is your best friend, and by the way, I recommend that he should be, then why would you not want to spend time with him talking? And I'm not talking about just telling Jesus all of the things that are on your list. I mean actually talking to Jesus about how you feel about life, about what is going on in your life. Would you not do that with your best friend? Do you not do that with your best friends? Do the same with Jesus. But then also make time, my brothers and sisters, to sit quietly and listen to what it is God might be telling you. If you have a prayer that is specific that you have asked for, start to pay attention to the world around you, because your prayer will be answered. Now, the answer may be no, or it may be some variation of what it is you're looking for, but whatever it is that happens there, trust me when I tell you, Jesus will never do anything for you that is not in your best interest. So say your prayers. Lastly, an all-in Christian is willing to use the faith that they have for the betterment of the culture that we live in. So I am not one to make political sermons. So I don't want you to hear what I'm about to say as politics. It is a challenge to you. Wherever you are on the scale of life, wherever you are in our class system, whatever your skin color, whatever your gender, whatever your sexual orientation is, ask yourself this question: how is it that the way that I conduct my life, how is it that the way that I think about the world around me, and how is it that I spend my time living up to and into the life that Jesus modeled for us when he walked around for 3 years? You see, Jesus came as a divine act of grace. Jesus said, "I am the bread of life. Those of you who eat this bread and drink this blood will have life eternal." We're talking, of course, about the sacrament of Holy Eucharist. But Jesus is also saying, be all in and live your lives according to my teachings. So when you say, well, why is it necessary for us to read Holy Scripture? Because you can't live according to the teachings of Jesus Christ if you don't know what they are. Why is it I say that you should pray every single day beyond form prayers and beyond a list of things that you may need? Because you can't change and be transformed unless you open your heart to Christ and allow him to do that. You get to choose all of these things that I'm telling you right now. You get to choose. Here's the thing about choice. When you make them, you're responsible for them. When you choose this, or you choose that, or you ignore something, or you remain inactive and passive when there is a need for social justice, when you do not engage in your faith community according to the way that Jesus asks us to engage in our faith community, you make your choice, that's fine, but you're accountable for it. And my job is to tell you that. All of this is about looking at the world in a different way. We are never too old. Just 30 years ago, we did not have computers. Some people I know who are in their 90s are very adept at iPads and iPhones and computers. They didn't know it 30 years ago, but they changed and they adapted, and they are now living in this world and in this time, looking at the world through a different lens. Here's the lens I suggest you look at the world through. Look at the world through the eyes of God.